Welcome to Biky Bones Presents, where the shadows tell stories and the truth refuses to stay buried. From chilling confessions to unsolved mysteries, we dig deep into the darkest crimes to bring you the facts that others leave behind. Biky Bones Presents, getting to the bare bones of it. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Biky Bones Presents, the true crime podcast where we dive into the darkest corners of criminal history. I'm Biky.
And I'm Kim. Today we have a truly chilling episode for you. We're talking about one of the most notorious serial killers in modern history, Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. For over 2 decades, he terrorized the city of Wichita, Kansas, leaving behind a trail of bodies, a city gripped by fear, and a haunting legacy that still lingers to this day.
Yeah, Kim, the name BTK sends a shiver down anyone's spine. Bind, torture, kill. Those 3 words became synonymous with Rader's reign of terror. And what makes his story even more unsettling is that he wasn't some faceless monster. He was a family man, a church leader, and an active member of the community. The BTK Killer was living among his victims, blending in so well that no one suspected the man behind the mask.
Exactly. It's the classic case of the ordinary person hiding their darkest secrets behind a mask of normalcy. But before we jump into the gruesome details of his crimes, let's take a step back and look at Dennis Rader's early life. It's crazy how some of the warning signs were there from the very start.
Rader was born in 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Growing up, he seemed like a normal kid. He had a mother and father who were both hardworking, and he had siblings. But Kim, there was something off about him. Even as a young boy, he exhibited disturbing behaviors.
Right. Like many serial killers, his early life wasn't filled with abuse or trauma, but rather with a deep, dark obsession that started early on. He had a fascination with death, control, and power. At just a young age, Rader started torturing small animals, something that in hindsight is often a precursor to violent behavior. He was also reportedly fascinated with voyeurism, autoerotic asphyxiation, and even cross-dressing.
Yeah, these early signs were chilling, but it didn't stop there. As Rader got older, these fantasies turned into a full-blown obsession. In high school, he began to imagine himself in positions of control over women, binding them, torturing them, and killing them. But what's insane is that he was able to keep all of this a secret. To everyone around him, he was just a quiet, introverted teenager.
And despite all of this darkness inside him, Biky, he led what seemed like a pretty normal life. He went into the Air Force after high school, served in the military, and then settled down. In 1971, he married Paula Dietz, and they had 2 kids. He even became a Cub Scout leader, all while harboring these horrific fantasies.
And then, in 1974, Rader finally acted on his sickening urges. On January 15, 1974, Dennis Rader went into the home of the Otero family in Wichita, Kansas, and committed his first murders.
The Oteros were just a regular family. Joseph Otero, his wife Julie, and their 2 children, Joseph Jr. and Charlie, were unsuspecting victims. But Rader bound them, tortured them, and murdered them all in cold blood. He strangled Joseph and Julie first, then he turned on the kids. Joseph Jr. and Charlie were left to suffocate in their own home.
It's a horrific scene. And here's the thing. Rader didn't just murder them and leave. He took something that made this crime all the more terrifying. He left behind a letter for the police detailing his crime, and he gave himself the now infamous moniker, BTK, bind, torture, kill. He actually wanted them to know who he was and what he had done.
Yeah, and this letter was the first of many he would send over the years. The BTK Killer wasn't just about the murders. He was about control, and he wanted to play a game with the media and the police. He wanted to be famous, and he wanted to be feared.
The Otero family murders were just the beginning. After that, Rader killed again and again, each time following his sickening pattern. He killed a total of 10 victims over 17 years, each murder more meticulous, more calculated, and more gruesome.
Let's go through some of the other victims, starting with Catherine Bright in 1974. Rader brutally attacked her in her home, stabbing and strangling her to death. Her brother Kevin survived, and his testimony would become crucial later on.
Then there was Shirley Relford in 1977, a mother of 3. She was bound and strangled, all while her children were locked in another room. Can you imagine the terror those kids must have felt hearing everything happen from inside that room?
It's horrific. But Rader didn't stop there. In the same year, he killed Nancy Jo Fox. He strangled her with a belt and even confessed to her before she died that he was the one responsible for the Otero murders. Then there's Maureen Hedge, whose body was posed in disturbing positions at a church where Rader had leadership. Each crime was more bold and brutal than the last.
And Vicky Wegerle in 1986. She was killed in a truly sickening way. Rader pretended to be a repairman, gaining access to her apartment. Once inside, he strangled her to death. And then, of course, Dolores Davis in 1991, who was Rader's final known victim. She was strangled with pantyhose.
Each of these murders was a calculated act of terror. But the thing that's so unsettling about Rader was how much he reveled in the attention he received. After each murder, he sent letters to the police and media, mocking them for their inability to catch him. He became this ghost, taunting everyone, while he blended into his community as a normal, everyday guy.
For years, the police had no leads. They were trying everything, but Rader was careful. He didn't leave physical evidence, and the letters he sent were cryptic, almost like riddles. He stayed one step ahead of the investigators.
Wichita lived in fear for over 20 years, never knowing when he would strike again. The city was gripped by paranoia. People would lock their doors even during the day, afraid that the BTK killer was lurking just around the corner.
Then, in 2004, Rader made a critical mistake. After years of silence, he started sending letters again, but this time, he was more confident, more brazen. He was taunting law enforcement and even the public with his messages. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was daring them to catch him.
And then, in 2005, Rader made another mistake. He sent a floppy disk to a local news station. The disk had metadata on it that led investigators straight to him. He had no idea that by doing something so mundane, he would be caught.
On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was arrested. The city of Wichita and the world finally learned the horrifying truth. The man who had been terrorizing them for decades was someone they had known all along.
When he was arrested, Rader didn't try to deny it. He confessed to all 10 murders in great detail, even describing his methodical planning and the enjoyment he derived from the control he had over his victims.
It was a public spectacle. His trial became a media frenzy. Rader was convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. He would never see the outside world again.
And despite his conviction, the legacy of the BTK Killer lives on. His story is a haunting reminder of the evil that can hide behind the most ordinary faces. No one ever expects a church leader, a family man, to be capable of such horrors.
That's all for today's episode. Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer, is a chilling example of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of a seemingly ordinary life. It's a story that will haunt us for a long time to come.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to @Biky Bones on YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok for more chilling true crime content.
We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.